Now then, guys, it's Phil. It's All Leeds TV, and it's another big match preview where we are joined by the beautiful Oscar. We're here to obviously dig into Southampton tomorrow, and we have plenty to get stuck into. Some Jesse Marsch press conference updates, transfer updates, bit of a reflect on how last week went as well. But first of all, Oscar, how are you doing, bud? Nice to have you back. How's things?
Good, mate. Good. Listen, it's come round pretty quickly, this game. Make sure you smash that like button, guys, for us, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done already. It massively helps us with shows like this. Mate, good. I feel okay going into tomorrow's game. I don't think we're going to get too carried away. It's still a very, very tough game this tomorrow. I think it's going to be a different type of game tomorrow. I think it's going to be very much end-to-end. I don't think either team's going to have long periods of possession like we saw Wolves have in the second half of the game on Saturday. So, very much looking forward to it, mate. It's an interesting one to see where we're truly at as a team, because I think last season we weren't great, to be honest, in either game against Southampton. Certainly the away game, we were terrible, for being honest. I think we were pretty terrible that day. Got away with 1-0, which kind of sums it up. So, certainly looking for improvement in that regard. So, we'll see, mate. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, guys, if you haven't already, check out the Twitter feed. There's generally already a load of pre-match content on this game, so we probably won't be sat here for the next hour and a half still going, but you never know. There's obviously the blog, which I put out yesterday. I know Scotty's done a reaction to Jesse's pre-match press conference. Oscar, opposition preview from you?
Opposition preview and general match preview as well. A bit of a tactical look at the game, what to expect from the match. And I guess I was going to do a lineup reaction video as well, or lineup prediction video, but we kind of know it, don't we? Let's be honest. We kind of know what the team's going to be tomorrow.
And obviously we do kind of do that feature in here as well. It won't play a massive part, but we will get to it. I think because of the nature of the team news and because of the nature of the last result, spoiler alert, I don't want to shoot down anyone who's not watching live with us and wants to fast forward, but probably going to all say unchanged lineup, I imagine. What do you think, Oscar?
I'd be amazed if there's a change. I think it'd have to be an injury in the warm-up for it to be a changed team. I just think, I can't see the team changing. That might be a different situation against Chelsea next week, depending on what happens tomorrow. But I think Jesse tends to keep things consistent. He was happy with the performance on last Saturday. So I don't see any reason why he'd change it, to be fair, mate.
Yeah. So, first away game of the season, first away trip. Obviously, if you're going, guys, enjoy. I know it's going to be a long journey. Trains are off, I think. So good luck getting there as well. We'll get stuck into it. Obviously, Jesse Marsch's press conference this week. I like that he just sort of doesn't let the journalist ask a question, just goes straight in and just goes, right, lads, this is what you all want to know, so I may as well give you it, and then you can ask anything else that you're actually bothered about on top. And this week, the opening paragraph was basically positive news on at least 3 players that we're going to be encouraged to have back in the squad. Obviously, Dan James was serving the last match of a 3-match suspension last week. He is back. He is in the squad, and by the sounds of it, is very much to be considered as a bench player. It doesn't sound like that's a one-off. It sounds kind of from what Jesse Marsch was saying as that will be his role this season. But Liam Cooper, Lewis Sinisterra and Adam Forshaw all now fit and should be available for selection tomorrow. But like we've already kind of alluded to, it is hard to see any of those 3 going straight into the starting lineup. If I had to put money on anyone going straight in, just because he's only ever really had 1 match on the bench in the Premier League era, it would be Coops. Basically, whenever he's fit, he starts games. But at the same time, he's had no preseason, hasn't played in a while, and has been out. So I could see him coming back and being on the bench. Same can be said for Forshaw. And the one that I would say is least likely to come into the starting lineup, just because Marsch was saying not necessarily 100% fit, but, might be able to get some sort of limited minutes out of him, is Sinisterra. So, Oscar, how good is it going to look tomorrow if all 3 of them, 4 if you include Dan James, if all 4 of them are on the bench? I mean, obviously last week we saw a big impact from the substitutions from Marsch, but that is a different ball game having them 4 on the bench to some of the kids that are probably going to lose their place, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think probably the first time in the Premier League era where we've probably got near to a full strength squad. Certainly in terms of obviously Coops, Forshaw, Sinistera, I don't think we'll start the game, but in terms of having the full squad together, this is probably the closest we've come to it, really. I think it's only Junior Firpo out from the kind of the first team squad, isn't it now? So I'm sorry, of course, Luke Hay, then Stuart Dallas, actually, just as I was thinking there. Again, we're pretty close. We're pretty close to a full strength squad. Again, I think this is a game where the bench is very important. I think we'll start the game with the front 4 as it was in terms of Aronson, Rodrigo, Harrison and Bamford. And with Southampton playing that high line, we might fancy a bit more pace, as the game goes on. Dan James to stretch the pitch or a Sinistera to come on with 20 minutes to go maybe and try and change the game if we are chasing things. Obviously, Forshaw's a nice little boost to have as well because we saw the impact of Matthäus Glick off the bench into that midfield. We have got that option to go to a midfield 3. If we do need to win this game again, like we did against Wolves. And yeah, it's just good to have options, mate. It's good to have options. Obviously, it's just the left-back situation that's looking a little bit light. Some would argue the striker situation as well. I'd probably make an argument for it myself, but I think the left-back's the area of concern in terms of depth at this moment in time. But it's just brilliant to have so many options. And I think when you've got 5 subs available and 9 players on the bench, it's daft not to have a strong bench. In terms of everyone talks about the starting 11 being brilliant, but you need a good squad as well. We play a very high intensity style of football. Muscle injuries are always a possibility. Fatigue's always a possibility. So it's about 9 subs, 5 subs to come on. It's a bit of a boost for tomorrow's game for me, and I think they will have a decisive impact for both teams tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, like Mark says here, it is going to be fucking hot tomorrow as well. So, don't expect the tempo of the game to be anywhere near as fast as perhaps as the Wolves game. But at the same time, we are 2 teams that are sort of run by former Red Bull employees. There is going to be a certain element of pressing to this game. I kind of think that for me, where this game is won and lost is in the press. Obviously, I know you've done the tactical stuff in your video, Oscar, but for me, obviously, I was doing the blog stuff. I was looking into the differences in our performance last week and obviously Southampton's at Spurs. Southampton come into this game bottom of the league. It's one game. They got trounced 4-1 by Spurs, but obviously went 1-0 up and then conceded 4. Southampton have kind of been that team for the last 4 or 5 years, though, haven't they? When it rains, it pours. It's never 1-0. It's always either 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9. And when we beat them 3-0 there in the first season under Bielsa in the Premier League, I kind of thought that one could have ended up being 9 as well. They were piss poor that day, but equally we were piss poor down there last season. But yeah, in terms of tactical battle, I think the slight differences I would say between not just obviously the formations are different, but the system and the way that the 2 managers implement what they both believe is, I think they actually take better care of the ball than we do. As daft as it sounds, we're not too bothered about looking after it and completing passes. We're actually trying to create chances with ours, which I actually prefer. And generally speaking, I actually think we're better at pressing than they are. I think we were better at pressing than they were under Bielsa. But I think this press has really impressed me so far in the last few preseason games and the Wolves game last week. I think it genuinely has got into, especially those front 4 and the 2 CDMs. I think it's really hit home and they've all sort of built up a good understanding with each other already. So I think in terms of the pressing and how we go about using the ball when we've got it, I think we could be right to go into tomorrow feeling quite confident. As Robbie said here, Southampton, I suppose to an opposition fan, maybe if you do look at Leeds this summer, all you will see is who's gone and maybe not know too much about who's come in, and fingers crossed if they are underestimating us. I mean, a lot of people do seem pretty confident. Oscar, the tactical stuff involved as well, but tactical stuff aside, do you go into tomorrow feeling like a win is on the cards? Do you feel like we could go there and quite easily get a result?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've got to go in with a degree of confidence. I think obviously our record down there is not the best. Let's be honest, it's not the best. Obviously last season happened and I think we were kind of confident going into the game last season as well, to be fair. I think we felt that in the weeks leading up to that, I think we got narrowly beat by West Ham, absolutely battered Watford, and it was a 1-0 battering, I think, with the 2 games leading up into that one. So we were pretty confident going into that one. So I think obviously got to err on the side of caution of overconfidence, but there's definitely areas where we can hurt this Southampton team and where we can get at them. I think obviously it's interesting reading through your article, mate, in terms of the point that Southampton do tend to put together more passes. In terms of comparing the 2 teams, Salisu, I think, was top, wasn't he, for most passes for Southampton at the weekend. They do tend to build up play a little bit more patiently, Southampton. So there's areas there where we can press them a little bit, but I think both teams overall are pretty direct. Not in terms of they play long balls, but they're trying to get the ball into the front players as quickly as possible. And I do personally think we've got more goal threat in this team. I think obviously with Che Adams probably not starting this game, talking to Dan, the Southampton fan, and just getting the general feeling from Southampton fans, there's not a lot of goals on paper in that Southampton team. And I think we've got goals in our team. Even off the bench, I'd say we've got goals in our team. Obviously, you look at Southampton's midfield. I think it's their strong point in terms of Ward-Prowse, Romeu and Lavia, who's obviously had a really impressive start to his Premier League career. Was Southampton's best player against Tottenham. So there's similar battles there in terms of the midfield, and we might need to change from midfield 3 to counteract what Southampton are doing with their midfield. They tend to play with 3 at all times. So that's going to be an interesting battle in that respect. But defensively, watching that Tottenham game in terms of how many times Tottenham were able to just almost bamboozle Southampton in terms of a little bit of movement, not even particularly clever movement, just simple runs from deep from either Harry Kane, Son, Kulusevski. Yes, I know obviously we haven't got players of that quality, but just little simple runs, in that kind of respect, and it just completely, they were confused, the Southampton defence. I think they changed to a back 5 system, and kind of they stick with the back 5 system because they didn't look convincing at all in that. They were making mistakes all over the place. The gaps between the front line and the back 5 was massive. They weren't compact at all. So there should be time on the ball potentially for our midfield to kind of get on the ball and dictate the game in that kind of respect. And so it's definitely a different kind of test of Wolves. I wouldn't necessarily say it's easier because it's a different kind of game. I don't think they've got the same level of quality as Wolves, but in a tactical sense, maybe you look at obviously Llorente, Robin Koch on the ball. They didn't make the best of choices against Wolves, and that was with time on the ball. Against Southampton, we're going to get pressed. We're going to have to make the right decisions when we're playing out the back. Be willing to go long when we're under pressure. So yeah, I think that's something that we probably will have worked on in the week. But I think with the options we have off the bench, I'd be disappointed if we lost this game, to be honest. And I'd be disappointed if we lost any game, but this is one where I look at and think, when you're looking at the start of the season, Phil, I know it's only 1 game into the season, Wolves are a mid-table team. I think you can pretty much be almost certain of that. Wolves are a mid-table team. You look at Southampton, I think they're a team that's going to be in and around that bottom 3 and really struggling. So they're in the team that are in that bottom 3rd. We want to progress this season from being a team that was in the bottom 3rd, where we finished last season, to being a mid-table team. We've got to look better than Southampton. We've got to, as simple as that, really. I think against Wolves, we more than matched Wolves. We beat Wolves. Let's see what we can do against Southampton, because from Southampton's point of view, they'll be looking at it a different way as well. They'll be thinking, we need to win this game too. So I do think it's going to be a very, very open game of football. I cannot see any way that both teams don't score. I do genuinely think that both teams will score in this game. I think it's going to be very open and a good game, I think. I'm just hoping that we can get things right that we got wrong on Saturday, which I mentioned.
Yeah. I don't know, mate. I'd like to think perhaps we could potentially keep a clean sheet, just because, like you said, their lack of goal threat really doesn't cause me as much concern. I've done the typical Leeds fan thing of after the Wolves game, I immediately settled on, I'd take a point next week. A point's a good result. And some people will say, come on, you've got to go into next week feeling like... Listen,
mate, 4 points from the first 2 games is a solid start. Yeah. Because, Phil, there'll be teams that lose the first 2 games, and all of a sudden you've got a 4-point buffer after 2 games. So it's only little, but it's a nice little... last season, we didn't win until October the 2nd, our first game. Straight away, we were on the back foot last season, and we never really recovered from that.
Yeah. No, for me, obviously, started the week, draw, and as the week's gone on and doing more and more research around the article and getting ready for the shows and stuff, started to feel more confident to the extent where I might end up going for a win later. I'm still not exactly sure yet, but for me, A couple of bits you touched on there that I just want to get into. Like, for me, if Southampton are going to score, for me, I don't think it comes from anything other than our high line. And I think if it is our high line, I look at their expected starting lineup anyway, and I would say, well, you need pace in behind. And unless they're randomly going to throw Theo Walcott in, who's not exactly as fast as he used to be, no one in that team, maybe Gineppo, but not really anyone sticks out to me as absolutely fucking rapid. Like, I'm not too worried in terms of, obviously, Wolves. There was a couple of players that were quick, and I still don't think they caused us as many problems as they could have done. So the defensive side of the game doesn't worry as much. I think we're a better pressing team. I don't think we're as careful with the ball, but that doesn't mean we're not as good on the ball. I think we try and make things happen. And I think, when you were talking about players like, obviously, Kulusevski and Son, yeah, we don't have that kind of quality, fair enough. But, the title of this video is about, Rodrigo potentially emerging from RAPHINHA's shadow. And obviously a couple of people in the comments are talking about Jack Harrison as well. Players like Harrison and Rodrigo with a bit of quality could stand out tomorrow. Aronson as well, obviously settled in really well. Harrison has got an assist last week. He's got as many assists this season as he got in the entirety of last season. That's fucking mental. So, everything to me seems really positive at the moment. And obviously, I look at this first 5 games and look, nobody's going to sit here confidently and say we beat Chelsea. Everyone might go like, oh, maybe we get a point here or there. And it's not exactly the same as last season where I look at the top 6 and I go, we're definitely getting nothing off any of them. Like, I think you'll agree with me, Oscar, in terms of the way that Bielsa didn't really adapt. You already kind of knew we'd fuck up all those top 6 games. But with Marsh being a bit more pragmatic, maybe we might take something. We're not going to beat all 6 of them, home and away, but we might nick something here or there off one of the top 6 sides. And as long as we can take points off the sides around us, which is these games, like you said, Southampton will be in and around us in the table. We got a great result against Wolves, who I think we can finish above Wolves. I think if we can get a good result at the weekend, I think we could potentially finish above Southampton as well. And yeah, I mean, it does get us off to a good start. We don't necessarily get much off Chelsea, but then the next 2 games after that, I see those very similar to these 2. Another 4 points there. You get 8 points out of your first 5 games. You're looking at least around 40 points in a season. It's a hell of a lot closer to safety than we ever were last season. So I think there is a lot to feel positive about. What do you make of, like, we'll obviously go with Rodrigo and that front 4, but who do you think can make a real big difference individually tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I 100% hear what you're saying in terms of Southampton not having a lot of pace in behind, but I kind of argue the same with us to an extent in terms of Harrison's probably the only real rapid player I'd say we have kind of in behind in transition on the counter-attack. But it is Jack Harrison for me. I think that battle between him and Walker-Peters will be very key, both going forward and defensively. So I think Walker-Peters will probably play wing-back or be playing in the back 4. Either way, you'll have a lot of attacking responsibility, be looking to get into that final third. And I think he's a really good player. I think he's a quality player, Walker-Peters, for me. So that's going to be a really, really key battle. I think, obviously, Brendan Emerson, we've got to talk about again. I think he is he feels like the player this whole system's built around. I think the understanding between him and Rodrigo is very, very important. So I think all 4 are important in their own way, but I think obviously Aronson's the one you look at and think he's probably the one who's most likely to create magic in the game. But Harrison's probably the most likely to deliver output week in, week out in that kind of respect. I think he feels like the machine in the front 4 kind of thing is going to get you goals, who's going to get you assists. Because I know obviously what you're saying about him equaling the assist record he got last season in terms of 1.
Yeah,
he could have had a lot more, to be honest. Obviously, the Bamford header, good save. There's one that Bamford's missed by about that much in the first half, in front of the south stand. So he could have, walked away with 2 or 3 assists on the day. So it definitely feels like a more creative Jack Harrison. I think there's a goal threat always to Jack Harrison as well. So it feels like, to me, he's the key man. But don't rule out Dan James or Sinisterra making a big impact off the bench potentially, in terms of against that high line, that bit of speed. Joffrey Gelhardt as well, being able to really manipulate the ball and liking those tight kind of spaces to, manoeuvre around. So certainly the bench is going to be key, but Jack Harrison feels like the most likely from the off to create stuff in the game. But just to talk about in terms of the fixtures, obviously, I know what you're saying in terms of try and get 4 points from these first two and then 4 points from the next two after Chelsea. But I just think the league's going to be quite unpredictable this season. I think no one would have predicted Bournemouth would have beaten Villa last week or Fulham would have got something against Liverpool. It feels to me like the Premier League, outside that kind of top 2 or 3, in terms of probably your top 4, actually, your Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham, I think anyone can beat anyone outside of that, really. I think it's going to almost become the Championship, in terms of unpredictability, the Premier League now. I think every team has got a top-class player. Obviously Southampton, who I feel will be in trouble this season, have got a James Ward-Prowse, a Romeo, Joe Aribo, I think is a very good player. I think he looked decent against Tottenham. They've got good players still. Kyle Walker-Peters, as I mentioned. So there's at least 3 or 4 players there who get into most teams in this league, and that's a team that's going to struggle potentially in Southampton. So definitely don't get too carried away. I wouldn't look too far forward. I think it's just all about, in terms of performance a little bit for us, in terms of have we got it in us to play and be competitive against all different styles of team, whether they're high pressing us, whether they're sitting off us, whether they're a team that's got better quality than us. Can we compete in those games? Because I think last season we had a weakness against teams that pressed high. Southampton was a great example. I think Everton away was another great example in terms of teams that really look at quality-wise, we should be getting something off against. We struggled against that last season, as well as obviously against the top 6, losing every single game. So definitely looking for improvement in that regard. I think we're looking to be more secure in the build-up, not giving silly, loose passes away, chances away through, playing into Southampton's hands. And that's a very important thing for us tomorrow. But yeah, it's an unpredictable league. I think just the main thing is let's try and get something from the game, and it just gives us a bit of momentum going into Chelsea. And I think we've got the players to do that. I think unlike Wolves, I think the Wolves team, when you compared our best 11 versus their best 11, you probably do still go majority Wolves in terms of Premier League experience. But in terms of us, tomorrow, I'd say we probably have the better starting 11 and certainly the better squad. But I don't get carried away. Come on, when have I got carried away?
Not my comment, mate. I don't have to explain it.
Last time I got carried away.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna. I don't really think there's too much to do in terms of like the lineup prediction. I think we kind of have already spoiled it. So the only thing I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna go position by position. We know Mellier's in goal. We know the back 4, unless there's an injury, is going to be the same. I mean, the only thing I'm going to ask you about the defense is if Cooper is fully fit, would you put Cooper back in?
I'm trying to find our banner actually where we had the team. And if Cooper's fully fit, will I put him back in? It depends. Is he fully fit? That's the thing. It depends. Is he actually fully fit?
He's fit, but is he sharp? Has he played minutes?
Yeah.
Has he got them under his belt, and is he ready to go in 90 minutes?
It would be a no from me for now. Not because if it was a case of Liam Cooper was fit last week and we're coming into this game now and he's had another week of training, absolutely by all means I'd go with Liam Cooper. And if the game starts badly tomorrow and we're struggling defensively like we did against Wolves, by all means I put Liam Cooper on and just lead the back line. It won't surprise me if Liam Cooper does come on tomorrow, to be honest.
I always find it with defenders on the bench, like unless it's going horribly wrong, they don't tend to get brought on though, because obviously everything's wrong.
Well, we've seen it with Marsh before and bring defenders on. That Wolves away game is a great example. In terms of when he went to
not in a good way though. Whenever
not
got a defender, I moved about it.
No, I know that, but it was it's not totally against the odds that he does something like that. In terms of putting Liam Cooper on, because I don't see why. You've got 5 subs. You've got to remember this is a big factor now, Phil. In terms of the 5 subs that you probably in the past, would you waste a substitution on a centre back? Probably not. But I think if you're looking at the defensive, thinking, okay, we've got 5 subs, another 4 to play with after I put Cooper on. If things aren't going well defensively, there's no reason why he wouldn't do that. He might go to a back 3. We don't know. It's but I'd be surprised if Cooper starts tomorrow.
Interesting that only 2 teams last week used 1 sub only, one of which was Wolves. And then I think every single game last week, had at least one team that did use 4 or more substitutes.
But it was telling though with Wolves, in terms of Wolves definitely started the second half the better team, but I think after we made the subs, we looked so much sharper than them, and I think it definitely tells. And I think in the past, when you have only 3 subs, we kind of weren't the best in terms of making substitutions. In terms of as good as we were under Marcelo Bielsa, we didn't often see games change in that kind of respect. In terms of when we use subs off the bench, I think that's fair to say. Even when we're at our best, we didn't really tend to change that many games off with players off the bench. But with 5 subs now, I think you've got to have a good bench. Otherwise, you get found out. 20 minutes to go in the game, you do get found out. And I think you saw that against Wolves. And it feels really weird us doing it to another team. In terms of how many times have we seen it done to us in terms of not having many options. I think I can't remember who it was. Was it Chem Campbell who came on for Wolves? I think it was. Again, a youngster.
Forgotten. I don't like Wolves.
But it's strange seeing another team having that kind of problem. Obviously when we've had it, for the last couple of years, it's quite a strange feeling. It shows
they have Connor Cody on the bench, but then they've just gone and got rid of him anyway.
Yeah, but obviously Cody, I don't think was ever going to come on. Don't think it was any surprise. It's a surprise to see him on the bench, to be honest, in the first place. But it does feel strange, that all of a sudden we had the better depth. And I think tomorrow, even if things go wrong, I'd still say we have the better depth in terms of more likely players to make a difference off the bench.
Yeah. Well, I saw that graphic that was put out for, I think it was Sky Sports News, the 6 clubs that have obviously spent the most this summer. I think there are teams that I think Forest have bought in more players than us. But out of those teams that have spent the most, ours is on the most people, whereas, Liverpool have spent big on 1 or 2 players, Nunes in particular. But with us, obviously, we've spread it out and bought in like a whole host of players. And that, for me, well, obviously, I'm going to come back to it when we finish going through this lineup, which won't take very long at all. But I do want to talk to you about any sort of transfer stuff that's come out of Marsh's press conference, because nothing positive came out of it anyway. Nothing that made me feel like the left back or striker thing is going to happen. But just while we're on the lineup still, the midfield, obviously, 𝐃𝐿𝐼 came off the bench last week and played really, really well, made a massive difference to the game and probably actually influenced the result alone, in all honesty. Fingers crossed, like the narrative around him seems to have changed in a week, in terms of before the Wolves game, it was like, well, needs to play or he won't go to a World Cup. So he has to leave. And now it's like 1 game in, great game. He's going to get minutes. He'll still go to the World Cup. He's not leaving. But, I asked this question semi-tongue in cheek because I kind of know your answer and know my answer before I ask it. But I have to ask, would you be tempted to start 𝐃𝐿𝐼𝐍 and maybe like drop one of Adams or Rocker, or even potentially switch things up and match up systems with Southampton just to sort of give him some game time? And if it is to get him in and it's not Adams or Rocker that you're dropping, like, would you drop anyone else, and who?
I wouldn't do, to be honest. I wouldn't do. Certainly not for Adams or Rocker. I think I don't see a reason to do that as it. Yeah, I know obviously we look stronger for having 𝐃𝐿𝐼𝐍 on the pitch against Wolves, but you got different types of game there. In terms of Wolves, we're very much unlike Wolves in terms of being quite possession focused in that second half against us, trying to keep the ball really well, and we had a bit of a problem with that for 20 minutes. But I feel more like doing that against Chelsea, to be honest, than doing it tomorrow. I think if you put a midfield,
I think you want a 4-3-3 against Chelsea. You've intimated that a few times now.
It's an option. It's an option. It's something to flirt with. Just a little flirt. That's all it is. It's up to, if you want to take it further, you can take it further. If not, then so be it. I don't know where I'm going with that.
There's going to be a cock joke coming here somewhere in there. It's bound to be.
Anyway, Robin Cock. Right, but no. In terms of 𝐃𝐿𝐼𝐍, I wouldn't do. I don't see a reason to change system. I'm not that worried in terms of that respect, in terms of what Southampton can do. And obviously Southampton have got the quality to beat us, no doubt about that. But I don't think there's a reason to change the system from the off. I think it worked well enough on Saturday, in terms of the way it works. And I think 𝐃𝐿𝐼𝐍 is probably, more likely to be suitable for us off the bench in this type of game. It's going to be a high intensity match. We might need that bit of an experienced head at times in the game. So, yeah, I'd say on the bench with an option to come on to make a midfield 2, make a midfield 3, play higher up. So many different things you do in 𝐃𝐿𝐼𝐍. And obviously Adam Forshaw is a similar situation. But I think Adams and Rocker does feel like our first choice midfield. But you've got to remember, 𝐃�𝐶, I'll say what I keep saying. He will play football this season. He will get minutes this season for Leeds. There's no doubt about that for me. There's 5 subs now. The fact we're playing so many games between now and the World Cup, we are going to have to rotate. Obviously I think we've got a spell where we've got Brighton, Everton, Brentford in about a 6-7 day spell. So he will play one of those games from the off. He's going to play football this season, 𝐃𝐶. He can play in so many different positions. He will play football. He's going to get a decent amount of minutes under his belt. Maybe not as many minutes as what he's got in the past, but he's still going to play minutes.
You'd struggle to get as many minutes as that in the past because not many people have ever played that many games in a row for any team.
I don't think anyone's going to get that many minutes this season. I just don't see it. Even the likes of Liam Cooper, I think, won't get that many minutes this season. I think we will spread it out a little bit more as the season goes on, as hopefully we do well in the cup competitions and things like that. That's a factor as well. He's going to play next week in the cup against Barnsley. There's no doubt 𝐃𝐶. I'd be stunned if 𝐃𝐶 was to start that game.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things to consider. I think ultimately, yes, with the Poland situation in terms of the World Cup, that feels like the overbearing situation here, almost the elephant in the room. But I think for Poland, it's about quality of minutes rather than actual minutes played. I think Poland would much prefer 𝐃𝐶 coming on for those 20, 30 minutes like he did against Wolves, like he did against Brentford, like he has done at times under Jesse Marsch, and start the odd game if it gets better performance from 𝐃𝐶. Because at the end of the day, you've got to remember, 𝐃𝐶 is 32, isn't he now? 32. It's a tough ask at this level, to play that much football, especially in such an intense team, one of the most intense parts of the pitch. He can't play the same amount of games. Otherwise, he'll be burnt out before the World Cup. This is a thing to consider as well. So, yeah, there's definitely you can't have it both ways almost, because if he was playing, if Poland are looking at it and saying he's not playing enough, they'd also be complaining if he's playing too much. So you can't have it both ways for me in that kind of respect. So ultimately, I think it's in 𝐶's best interest to stay here. I really do hope he stays here as a leader, as a quality on the pitch in terms of what he can give us. I think it's a no-brainer that 𝐃𝐶 stays at this club, and I think it gives him his best option of playing at the World Cup.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Johnny's comment here, actually, where he says maybe it might help him not playing every minute.
I agree. We've seen this, though, with players. Pablo Hernandez, towards the end of his Leeds career, on that promotion run, people forget that Pablo Hernandez pretty much came on after that break, 45 minutes every single game. And he played the best football of his Leeds career in that spell.
He'd come on at half-time and then get subbed at 85 as well,
wouldn't exactly. It was his best football. He played his best football in that spell. It's amazing.
Just in answer to Justin's question here, no, they're quite friendly with each other. I think Jesse spoke in the pre-match press conference before the last time we played them and just said they never actually worked together in the Red Bull teams and stuff, but they did go for dinner together a few times and work together, and Marsch was allowed to go and see how 𝐅𝐎𝐻𝐿 did his job before he moved over here. So yeah, they know each other quite well. I don't see them two falling out, but I'm not going to bother asking anything about the front four. It's not going to change. We know it's not. Dan James isn't going to come back in. I think it was quite telling in the...
Let's just debate this Rodrigo question, because I think we've got about half an hour in. We haven't actually answered the Rodrigo question.
Go on then.
Do you think Rodrigo has emerged from Raphinha's shadow? Do you think Rodrigo, we're going to see a better version of Rodrigo now that Raphinha's gone and almost the limelight is back kind of in Rodrigo's court, if that makes sense? I mean, do you feel like it's too early to say that, or there's potential for that?
I'll be honest, I think bringing Raphinha into that conversation is a bit silly. For me,
I'm not saying it's good, by the way. I'm not saying he's going to have that level of influence, but he'd be a better player. I mean, the example I'd use is Becchio and Beckford, in terms of when Becchio and Beckford were playing up front together, Beckford would get 25, 30 goals. Becchio would get about 15. When Beckford left, Becchio became the main man and started getting 20, 25 and got his move to the Premier League. Is it that kind of scenario? We've seen it with other players as well. Lewis Cook, Alex Mowat, it depends how far back you want to go. Do we have that kind of situation potentially?
For me, again, still no. I think the problem is, obviously, I don't think you can compare and bring Raphinha into the question. Like, a situation that you were just talking about then, is the most notorious one is kind of like Cristiano Ronaldo and Benzema at Real Madrid. People just thought that, it was all about Ronaldo, and as soon as Ronaldo leaves, Benzema is probably going to walk away with the Ballon d'Or this year on his own easy. And he's got better since Ronaldo left. I don't see it as that kind of situation here. For me, we need to take as much pressure off Rodrigo as we can, because so far since Marsh's come in, Marsh has done a great job in seeming to motivate him, give him that kind of leadership, and give him the responsibility that seemed to have a good impact on his performances. And especially, I know, look, small sample size, Cagliari and Wolves, but the last two games, the final game of pre-season, the first league game of this season, some of the stuff that frustrated me last year where he gives the ball away, I'm now starting to see at least he's trying to actually create something. It's not as though he is just being shit. And
you see the vision. You see the vision.
I mean, last season, I don't think it was a case of vision. I think it was just like sometimes things were a little bit too delayed and the decision making wasn't fast enough, and maybe he wasn't up to the pace of the league quite yet. I don't know, but for me, I think stepping out of Raphinha's shadow is not going to be him that does that, to be honest. I think the likely person to take the Raphinha mantle on this season is probably Aaronson, and take, or if not, maybe Sinisterra on the other side. But for me, Rodrigo,
for anyone in terms of Raphinha. I think Raphinha, the fact he's got to Barcelona, but I think it's going to be more of a shared effort this season between the four, trying to replicate Raphinha's output or outperform it in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And obviously with Rodrigo, I think if we can just get a £27 million player out of him, most Leeds fans would be maybe not happy, but relieved based on how the last two seasons have gone. Look, it started well. I did some research when I was doing the article and stuff, and obviously earliest he's ever got off the mark in a season for us, which isn't hard. But when it comes to goals, like, he's not actually scored. He scored 7 goals in his first season, 6 last. He's not scored more than 7 league goals in a year. Like, this has to be the year where he goes on and at least breaks double figures. And I can see him doing that from not even playing up front, like playing as this 10 role that he's doing so far. So I think the less we bring comparisons into a player like Raphinha and the less pressure we put on him and we just leave him to sort of get on as he has been so far, that would be good for me, because he's doing a bit of proving me wrong so far, and I'm happy to keep eating my words. But with you and how do you feel about the Rodrigo situation? Do you feel like he has started to sort of change the narrative around him a little bit so far, or is it too early to say?
Again, I think obviously it's been a much improved last couple of weeks from Rodrigo. I'm not just talking in terms of the Wolves game, talking in terms of pre-season as well. And I think Stephanie makes a really good point in terms of that. I don't feel like we are a one-man team in terms of going forward this season. I think everyone's got an equal kind of threat. I think in terms of Harrison, they're both got similar levels of responsibility and both got a similar kind of threat. Maybe not the level of Raphinha's threat, but we've got. If one of those got injured, I wouldn't think it would be as detrimental as what it would have been if Raphinha got injured last season. I think that's very much the point to make with that. But for me, with Rodrigo, as I said on the preview, make sure you check it out if you haven't done already. Shameless little plug there. With Rodrigo, I think the situation is that we've kind of seen this before with Rod, in terms of he's had these runs of form where you thought, he's really getting on it, and we need to see him do that now, in terms of consistently putting out these performances. And I think technically he's one of our best players, if not our best player technically, just purely from what he can do on the football pitch. I mean, he's got great skill. He's got that ability to get us 10 goals this season. Which
Bielsa and Mark have both said that they feel like he was the most technically gifted player in the squad.
I think he is. I think Aaronson obviously is a contender as well, but I think Rodrigo has got that potential. But you got to look at it from Rodrigo's point of view, that now that Sinisterra is back available, Dan James is back available, it's probably Rodrigo's place to lose, because Aronson's not going to lose his place, Harrison won't lose his place, and I doubt Bamford will either. No. So Rodrigo's got to keep performing. I've said this before with the preview, that this is a big game for Rodrigo. It's a big one. You've got to at least put in a similar level of performance against Wolves to keep his place. And I think it's good to have that competition. I don't think we've had that competition in that number 10 position since Pablo. And even under Pablo, With Pablo in the team, we lack depth in that area, so it's good to have different options there now. So definitely pressure on Rodrigo. I don't think if he does have a bad game, I think you come out the team now with this team in terms of the system we've built, the quality of squad we've built. I think that's the situation now, and I think it's going to be pressure on everyone. But it's good pressure. It's good pressure for us to have those.
I 100% agree on in terms of take that back four and the goalkeeper out of it. You've got basically the rest of that team, the two CDMs, they're not changing unless there's an injury or a suspension. That front four, again, like you said, 3 of that 4 I don't see changing. The only person I see that could lose his place for me at the moment would be Rodrigo. And that's only if he returns to the form of last season. If he carries on like this, it is going to be hard for a player like even Sinisterra. It's going to be hard for Sinisterra to get place in that team. But, if Rodrigo doesn't keep up this form, I mean, I've already said I'd like to see Aaronson go in at 10 and then put Sinisterra on one wing and Harrison on the other and go that way. But, a couple of questions I did want to move on to. It kind of sounded from the pre-match press conference that any sort of hope of signing a left back or a striker have very much dwindling. By the sounds of it, Orta's on holiday. Why the fuck he'd go on holiday during a transfer window as opposed to after, I'm not going to bother asking. But apparently he's on holiday. And do we see a left back coming in? I think out of the two, the left back situation does seem to be more important, I'd say, than the striker situation. But which do you see anyone coming in by the sounds of what Marsh was saying?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, we've got to remember that Jesse Marsh said in a post-match interview towards the start of the season, in pre-season that is, that we would be signing a striker. I think he actually used those words, we would be signing a striker. So I think obviously you've got to consider too that we've got to play Southampton, Chelsea, Brighton and Everton between now and the transfer window closing. So we could pick up some injuries in that time. We could pick up some suspensions, losses in form. There's different things to consider in there. I think we've done a lot of our main business early. I think the left back situation is obviously a situation where Junior Firpo, in terms of the potential for injuries with Junior Firpo, we've seen that in the last couple of years in that kind of case, the last year and a half, sorry. Obviously the striker situation with Patrick Bamford over the last year. So I think it's more of a situation where if Bamford is, got over this injury, then obviously we're less nervy about it. But it does feel like obviously we've got two out and out strikers at this football club at this moment in time, and I think most clubs really have got a similar situation, 3 at most. In terms of teams that play 1 up top, and that's what we kind of play. So it would be nice to get another striker and a left back. I think it would be nice to do that. I think the left back, for my personal preference, just purely because of the injury situation, the fact we've got 1 out and out left back at the football club, I would like to see the left back. If you had the choice between the two, it would be nice to get the left back sorted. The striker situation, it was interesting because obviously Ismail Assar was mentioned as well, in terms of he's a winger, but that'd be an interesting element to it as well. But I don't really know, to be honest, mate. If you can probably tell by my kind of like sitting on the fence kind of answer. But for me, I would agree the left back is probably the priority out of the two. But it would be nice to get a striker as well, because if Bamford did pick up another injury, you're down to them relying on Joffy. And listen, Joffy is a good enough player to play up top in this league. But remember, he's 19, so it would be nice to get both done. Personally, I wouldn't rule anything out because we hear different noises all the time, in this transfer market, and you don't want Jesse Marsh at the same time to go on that interview and say we're going to sign this player and this player, because all of a sudden the selling clubs will go, okay, we'll put that price right up. So all sorts of different things happen. I think we've used the market really wisely. Sinisterra came out of absolutely nowhere. Mark Rocker kind of came out of nowhere. It was only really Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson, and to an extent Christensen, that we kind of knew about, well in advance, trying to obviously Phil Haley Athletic and different news outlets. So a lot can happen.
We knew about Rocker and Adams 2 years ago. Just
well, we mentioned.
I've got to say,
what was our striker list, Phil, on our left back list? Gaia. Don't forget about Gaia.
Yeah, he's not a striker there. The left back, but
no, left back. I'd said left back striker.
Would be the one.
Are you critiquing my knowledge of Spanish football?
No, mate.
That's the most offensive thing you've ever said to me. If so.
But yeah, I mean, I am prepared to get off the fence. I'm not you. I would say we do need to sign at least one, if not both. I agree. They don't need to be players that go straight into the first team, and that money that could have gone on 𝐃𝐻𝐿. I understand the notion of they were willing to spend that money on a player that raised the ceiling of the squad, but I don't mind splitting that money in two and raising the floor of the squad a little bit, to be honest, just because I think that at the moment that left back floor is quite low, and that striker slot, unfortunately, if Bamford's out, is also quite low. It is just basically him and Joffrey, and I don't really think that's a good one. That is probably also true. I've defo said worse. But yeah, the only other thing I wanted to
critiquing my Spanish football knowledge.
I wasn't critiquing.
I felt you were. there.
But the next thing I was going to ask, just quickly before we sort of move on to predictions, guys, if you want to quickly before we get off tonight, just get your predictions in and we'll flash them up. But cup draw, like you alluded to earlier, has been made. We have got Barnsley at home. Do we think we've got any chance of a cup run this year? Because Bielsa isn't here, and obviously Bielsa didn't give a fuck about cups. Maybe Jesse Marsh will. What do you think?
I think we've got the squad more for a cup run. And by the way, guys, I was joking. Phil has said far, far worse than that to me. So he said some awful things over the years, as Phil. Never apologised either, by the way. Never apologised. You know, I've just had to move on with those kind of offensive things he said to me in the past. But yeah, in terms of the cup run, yeah, I think we've got a better squad for it now. I think obviously Klich, Forshaw, could be our starting midfield in that situation. Yeah. Last season had been our starting midfielders in the league. So definitely an improvement in quality. The likes of Dan James, Gelhardt, Greenwood. It's not a case of I think we'll change all 11 players either. So you might still see the likes of Brendan Aronson playing in the League Cup or Sinistera. So I think we should be looking to do that if we look okay in the league. I think we've got to go for it this season. I think you've got to factor in the fact the World Cup comes in at a really awkward time for the top clubs and the potential for a shock this season, maybe a Wembley, something like that, or a semi-final, quarter-final. I do think teams, it's such a congested first bit of the season, especially the League Cup, like the Liverpool, Man City in the Champions League, they're not going to go for it at all, I don't think, in the League Cup. FA Cup might be a slightly different story, being after the World Cup, but the opportunity could be there for Leeds for several different reasons, and I do think we need to take it seriously this season. And if we can't get through against Barnsley, then it'd be very disappointing. Even if we do play a weekend team, it would be very disappointing.
Yeah, mate.
It's almost like we've got so used to cup exits, early cup exits, and cups. It's almost like a
you forget an option. You forget a cup run is an actual option.
Yeah,
I thought we all just went out first game every year anyway.
It's not a friendly. We can actually win this thing, or we can actually go far in it.
This is the point. Like I said to Ellie this morning, I tried desperately to get 2 tickets for the Everton game. I managed to get one with Lad and Dad, but I couldn't get one for Ellie. So I tried doing that ballot thing. That was a pain in the arse. And I'll just keep checking back to see if I can get her one. But obviously the tickets aren't on sale yet, I don't think, for the cup game against Barnsley. But I was like, oh, do you want to go to the Barnsley game? She was like, yeah, why wouldn't I? Like, it's a game at Ellen Road under the lights on a night. And I was like, oh, you're so naive. It's a cup game. And she was like, what's the difference? And I was like, well, no one really gives a shit because we're going to get knocked out anyway. And she was like, oh, is that not just a Bielsa thing? I was like, oh, shit, maybe it is. She actually caught me out. So, yeah, like, I'm intrigued to see if we could actually get a cup run built up and, like... I
don't want to be like, criticising Marcelo Bielsa here. It was one of the frustrations.
It was a quirk that I didn't mind because it was always so good in the league that you didn't give a shit about the cup.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, imagine the Crawley defeat last season.
Could you imagine the Crawley defeat if Bielsa wasn't in charge and it was Marsh as well, like the hate he'd get? Like,
it's certainly the way it happened. You've got to respect, obviously.
It just kind of got ignored and moved on.
Things like this.
Yeah.
Well, that's another one to mention. Obviously, Joe Robles in goal instead of the past backup keepers we had. I think he's a much more experienced head and a nice little signing that, by the way. But
he wasn't in net when Wigan won the FA Cup, was he?
He was in the final. Yeah, he was. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, well,
I mean, it was 9 years ago. It was over 9 years ago, but
that is the reason we've brought him in then, clearly. So, guys, if you haven't already, get your predictions in. We're just going to go score predictions now and leave it there for tonight, just because I think we've probably covered everything.
Thanks for the support, by the way, guys. Over 200 of you in the chat again. Absolutely buzzing with that.
Yeah, guys, if you haven't already, obviously smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. As Oscar says, we are trying our best to hit 30k this season. Yeah, guys, get your likes on there. Much appreciated for staying with us. But if you haven't already as well, get them predictions in. Oscar, I'm going to ask you first, mate. You've already said that you think a draw isn't a bad result, and you don't think we should be too confident. But what do you actually expect from tomorrow?
I think we win the game. I think the only reason I think we win the game is I think we've got that slight bit more goal threat than Southampton. I think it'll be a very open football match. 2-1 Leeds, I'll go for. I just saw enough in that Tottenham game. I know it was Tottenham. I know we've got Kane, Son, Kulusevski, world-class footballers. But the space that opened up, Southampton will have had to win this game. Will have had to have had a really good week on the training pitch in terms of to sort out those problems in terms of spaces between the back line. But listen, if we're wasteful in front of goal, it could be a problem for us. And defensively, in terms of in both boxes, you never know what will happen with this Leeds team. It's going to be a chaotic game again, I think. So I'll go 2-1 Leeds.
Yeah. I think I'm definitely agreeing with the thing that most people are saying around the goal scorers anyway. James Ward-Prowse scoring a free kick, I think, is their only way that they get a goal. I don't see them scoring if it's not a Ward-Prowse set piece.
Stop it.
But yeah, I did go 1-1 in the preview article, but as the week's gone on, I am starting to feel more confident. I might come up and join you on a 2-1. I think if they are going to score, like I said, it'll be a free kick from Ward-Prowse. I
love the fact on the article that most of it was spent talking about how crap Southampton are, and then you went 1-1 at the end of it. I was thinking, hang on a minute. This is like such a positive. This is a positive Phil article. He's like really loving life, and then he goes for 1-1.
I told you I tried to let the head roll the heart.
This Southampton team, according to Phil, was worse than the Derby County team that broke the Premier League points records, and then we're going to draw 1-1. But listen, if we get something from the game, it's a decent start to the season for us. Yeah. If we win, it's a real bonus. It's a real bonus that. But we'll see how things go.
Yeah, I'd like to see Bamford on the score sheet, and again, like we said earlier, if Rodrigo can keep up that form and give Jesse a bit of a headache as well, there.
I love a clean sheet as well.
Yeah. So I mean, we're not greedy. We don't want it all. We want a 5-0 win. Yeah, guys, we're going to leave it there tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, Oscar. Thank you for your time as always. But yeah, smash the like, hit subscribe. Plenty of content to come out over the channel over the weekend, obviously. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. And I hope wherever you're watching the game tomorrow, guys, if you're going to the game, stay safe and have fun. But otherwise, enjoy the sun and let's get pissed and get 3 points if we can. Cheers for joining me, Oscar. I'm going to end the broadcast now. So just say
that would be post-match reaction as well, guys. So make sure you keep your eyes posted straight after the game. We'll have a post-match for you as well.